Welcome to the Secrets Christmas Special. We're here at Norwood 205th Street for this extra festive Secrets. We're gonna do the D train, and we're gonna be stopping at a few holiday locations along the way. Despite the name, you'd actually be hard-pressed to find Norwood on any of the station signage here. We're using the eastern entrance with its long ramp to the end of the platform. The thing about this station is that trains will always arrive on one track and always depart from the other track, despite it being a terminal station. They go further to relay and turn around. Pretty easy to look through the tunnels and see that area. The reason why a terminal station has such an unusual setup is because Norwood 205th was not designed to be a terminal station, and the line was supposed to go further. Also, it's why the B train terminates at our next station, Bedford Park Boulevard, as it's just easier that way. And on a southbound D train, you'll have to wait a little bit at Bedford Park Boulevard, and this is due to the fact that crews need to be changed here, as there's not adequate facilities at Norwood 205th Street. More proof that it was never really a terminal station. Also, we meet the third track here, but the southbound express and local tracks end up being flipped. Next stop, Kingsbridge Road, a station with a weird setup. Thanks to the Bronx's weird topography, you get an underground station with an exit below it, which also causes a mezzanine below the platforms. It causes strange sights like an exit staircase that's going down. The platforms are pretty thin here compared to Bedford Park Boulevard, but it's great to be back in pure I&D territory. Look how shiny those blue tiles are. But being the I&D and B divisions only venture into the Bronx, you just know there's gonna be some unconventional things here. Alright, we're entering the third express station in a row, Fordham Road, and what the? A side platform? And why is it on the left? Okay, let's just walk down the platform and investigate this. Oh, there's the rest of it. So we've made it to Fordham Road, my favorite I&D Concourse Line station, because this setup is just ridiculous. The northern half of the station is forked into two, the eastern fork having the northbound local track and the express track, and the western fork having the southbound local track. It's interesting because you get to see all types of I&D tiling here, both for side platforms and for island platforms. F. We then go south to where the forks meet, and we get a very wide island platform. Of course, it thins out as we go south, but at this end you're able to fit 4 columns. Nicely enough, it's also the busiest part of the platform. Now let's go to the similar duality of the mezzanine. The southern end is very wide. Go here on a weekend and slap a few filters, and you can make a pretty convincing liminal space photo. Meanwhile, the slightly more maze-like northern end is a bit confusing, especially if you want to cross over. But use this exit for all the buses. The BX12 Select is back, and there's many more buses here too, including some B-Line buses. But back to the trains, on to 182nd and 183rd Streets, where there's no 183rd Street exit. Okay, Tremont Avenue is next. Now the I&D tiling is red, but this station used to be even redder before the columns were painted gray. Also, the tiling uses a slightly different font here. You can also see this at Canal Street, on the A, C, and E trains. Until 145th Street, this will be the last express station on the concourse line, and we get quite the express run. Back to talking about exits, this station is one of the newer ones to get an elevator installation, and it also has one of the weirdest exit names in the system, Echo Place. Up next, 174th and 175th Streets. Quite a few oddities here, and let's start off with the fact that it's another station to have the property of an exit being below the platforms. It's even better here, not only because the entrance is nicer looking because it's Enhanced Station Initiative, but because down on the road, you can literally see where the ceiling has to dip down in a box shape for the trains. Also at this exit is the weird East of Concourse sign. But yes, 2 numbers in the station name, And what's cool is that the tiling actually adapts to this. On the southern end, with the exit I just mentioned, the tiling only reads 174, but on the northern end it only reads 175. Useful indicator of where you are on the platform. There's some abstract art on the platform, and there's also this thin wall by the 175th Street exit, which does not have the small black name tiling. Then 170th Street Station, where the big name tiles don't have a border around them. Well, they do, but it's just white colored, so you can't really see it unless you look closely. 167th Street also is like this. Don't forget to spot more abstract art, and we head to the home of the Yankees, 161st Street, Yankee Stadium, or as the tiling will tell you, 161st Street, River Avenue, because just like at Willets Point Boulevard, the station came first. When we get here on the 4 train, I'll focus on the elevated part of the station, but the underground part of the station is very yellow? Likely to make the station distinct, there's a lot of yellow tiling here, and there's even this I&D tile band inversion. There's also a strange preserved sign and a rock wall, and the eastern exit is a little slopey. Back on the platform, and you get these completely unique benches. And finally, while this station does not serve express trains, there are switches north of 167th Street that make it technically possible to go straight to Tremont Avenue after there. Our first of not too many stops in Manhattan, 155th Street. Once again, Tileworks says different, as it's called 155th Street, 8th Avenue. The exit is quite wide here, as it formerly served the Polo Grounds, and was a connection to the IRT Polo Grounds shuttle, which is something I'll explain more when we get to the 4 train. But up the large ramp and the large staircase to the exit. The metalwork here makes this one of the more interesting ones, and they came here at night to show another unique feature here, that being the underlit railings. We merge with the A and C and head onto the Central Park West line, and we'll skip 145th and head to 125th. When I was here for the A train, I neglected to mention the mezzanine, which has a lot of brickwork incorporated into the walls. For an IND station, the mezzanine isn't actually that long, but at the end, there is a rare instance of open subway bathrooms. But with the A and C sharing tracks, we're suddenly a lot busier. Speaking of the A train, 125th is the station mentioned in Duke Ellington's song, Take the A Train. Then we head to 59th Street Columbus Circle. Back in the A train video, I already talked about this station's main highlights, but did you know that the columns here used to be painted red? Also, now that my skills have improved over the past 6 months, here's a better view of the abandoned island platform. 7th Avenue 53rd Street is next, and you probably know it for the cross-platform transfer that it has with the E train. Additionally, it's possible to hear and feel the rumble of the Broadway line. Overall, all of the I&D tunnels in the area are very delicately placed, due to the nearby 6th Avenue trunk line junction that we're about to go over, not to mention the E train. We're now truly on 6th Avenue, and 4750th Street's Rockefeller Center is our first stop. 50 and 47 at the tile band, but they just alternate instead of actually being location indicators like at 174th, 175th Streets. At the northern end of the platform, you can see the tracks start to slope down in preparation for the junction. But let's exit the station into the mezzanine, where you can see a part-time entrance leading directly to Rockefeller Center. The mezzanine itself has a lot of cool aspects to it. For one, there are these brownish bricks, which you don't see anywhere else in the system. There is also whatever this is. However, there is another part of the mezzanine that has a completely different style to it, with the round, off-white columns and sleeker design. There is also a bit of a subway mall in this area. Exiting the station, and we get to the festive streets of New York City in December. A bit of a walk, and we get to the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree. It's very gorgeous, but be warned of the tourists. After that quick stop, admire the subway entrances on the side with that interesting sign. We're heading back through that entrance in sort of a spiral staircase. Not really. Another thing on platform level is at the very end where the tile band just stops, and there's a weird gap that doesn't make any sense. But moving on to 42nd Street Bryant Park. the second station in a row with the Christmas time attraction. We're once again heading outside to check out the Winter Village at Bryant Park. It's a pretty festive marketplace area, and there's even a skating rink. But once again, be warned of the tourists. As we head back into the station, take note of the gold decorations on the entrance fence. Ironically, the platforms are pretty much identical to Rockefeller Center. But on to 34th Street, Herald Square, where trains on the northbound platform stop a little short. It is great for rail fanning though. This station's quite deep in order to go below the Broadway line, and you can actually see where the clearance drops, and that's how you know you're right under the Broadway line. This station's also one of the most well-known locations where you can easily see the change in height. The tile work is actually not IND standard because of a renovation, and you have this dots pattern instead. There's also the beautiful red panels with the 34s. Heading back on the D train, and we head to West 4th Street Station. The IND is playing tricks on us again, and there's not an actual entrance at West 4th Street. The next best thing is the West 3rd Street entrance, located at the very end of the platform, with a gradual ramp leading to it. While the elevator exit is also here, the subway sign at the staircase exit is covering up an original sign. And now, Broadway-Lafayette Street. In the 6 train video, I only showed the IRT platforms and the new transfer. However, there's still a lot of interesting things here. That being the transfer to the downtown 6 train, which takes you on this elevated walkway through the concourse. You can see interesting designs on the wall here, and when you go down to the lower level, the ceilings are quite high. Eventually, this will lead to the downtown 6 train platforms. We're about to split off from the 6th Avenue line already, but it's interesting that, for there being 4 lines on 6th Avenue during weekdays, there's only the D and F during the weekend. Or that. And that. Oh my. We then head to Grand Street, which is the 12th newest station in the system. It's the only station to exclusively use those 1960s tiled walls, even though they're more associated with the platform extensions on the IRT lines. 79th Street on the 1 does come close, but there's a little section of restored tiling. Grand Street may seem like a bit of an oddball station, and that's because it was built as part of the Christie Street connection, which connected the IND 6th Avenue line to the Manhattan Bridge and Williamsburg Bridge. Grand Street will also be a future transfer point to the 2nd Avenue subway, and one of the plans will call for a cross-platform transfer, knocking down the walls and creating 2 island platforms. Meanwhile, the mezzanine has signage that tells you where the trains are going, but not what trains are there. Don't forget to spot the red train sculptures near the exits, and then we head on the Manhattan Bridge, this time on the north side, which has less exciting views. Our next stop, Atlantic Avenue-Barclays Center, used to be called Pacific Street for the 4th Avenue line platforms. Head to the passageway that connects the IRT and the B&Q trains, and you'll see some nice photos. Then, 36th Street on the 4th Avenue line, which mainly has a wall hiding one platform from the other. But just like at Vernon Boulevard Jackson Avenues, there's a bit at the end where you can see the other platform. There's also only one exit at the very south end of the platform, so if you're getting off here, don't be in the north part of the train. The mezzanine is pretty cozy, but there's actually interesting things to see on the walls, not just the renovation plaque. This art piece shows the development of the subway in 3 phases: the planning, the construction, and the riding. 36th Street is the last station on the D train that shares tracks with other lines. From this point, we're on the West End line, and it's only the D train. The ride from 36th Street to 9th Avenue is an interesting one as we curve out into the brightness and then go through another tunnel, but then 9th Avenue's here. Out of all the West End stations, we're already at the most unique one. First off, these unique signs. Then the fact that you can see 38th Street Yard from here, which is where the majority of maintenance trains are stored. Then the station house with its tall ceilings and generally fancy design. And of course, the abandoned set of platforms right below us, that once belonged to the Culver Shuttle, which was a link between 9th Avenue and Ditmas Avenue on the F. The no entry staircases are right there, and it's easy to look down below. Appreciate the nice canopies, and then the location of the station itself. For a bit, it's at grade, and that's because at the eastern end, there's a nice curve of D trains heading towards Fort Hamilton Parkway. For all the nice curves in the system, people really don't talk about this one. It's a shame because this is a good one. Warning you now, a lot of the West End stations don't really have anything special to them, but there is Fort Hamilton Parkway. Along with this odd-looking emergency exit, head down to street level and you'll see, well, it's kind of a concrete viaduct, not like Ocean Parkway or 33rd Street, but it is something. The important thing to know about the West End line is that the D train was not always alone here. The brown M train used to go to Bay Parkway on weekdays. There are a few remnants, like a zebra board for an 8-car R160. I wonder what line runs those. This was taken at 50th Street Station, and despite that station being renovated, it actually doesn't have full-height walls at the section with no canopy. It instead does it the classic way, with the fences. Oddities on the mezzanine include this mesh windscreen and the return of the glass blocks. Most local stations aren't that interesting here, and I'll get to 62nd Street when I do the end, but the canopy end of stations like 79th Street is now how it's supposed to be. Really, there is nothing about some of these stations, but 18th Avenue is interesting as it's surrounded by curbs on both ends. 20th Avenue also doesn't have anything for it, but we finally get to an interesting station, Bay Parkway. Similar to 9th Avenue, you can see the fancy signage, which is green this time. The canopy is also supported by these unique-looking columns. The mezzanine is a nice compact space, and there are these little landings on the staircases. There are also landings on the staircases that lead to the street, and this is one of the few stations that does it like this. And of course, the elevator, which is tucked in nicely. Moving far away, and you get a nice concrete viaduct, similar to how it's done at Fort Hamilton Parkway, but this one's a lot bigger. At night, it also looks really bright. This makes Bay Parkway probably the star station of the West End line. The B1 bus, which runs under 86th Street in this area, has unique bus stops when it's underneath the elevated, which doesn't have the actual bus stop, but has a sign with a picture of one, back on platform level, and this station is pretty nice aesthetically. It's also where the M train used to terminate. However, contrary to what you may have thought, the M train did not use the middle track to terminate. It used the southbound track. There are switches east of the station that it used to turn around. We're then heading to 25th Avenue Station, which has an out-of-bounds sign. What I mean by this is that this sign is located beyond the Do Not Cross sign. It's also one of the very few signs left in the system to use the standard font. When the canopies end, we get a third style, this meshed fence, which also has a nice diagonal to it at the end of the platform. And on to the penultimate stop, Bay 50th Street. If you remember from the A-Train video, there were a lot of Beach Street stations, but this is the only Bay Street station in the system. You can also see where the tracks go to Coney Island Yard from here. Coney Island Yard is huge, and you're able to see some of it between Bay 50th Street and Coney Island. But here we are at Coney Island, the last stop. There is a lot of history to this station, and when I get here on the N train, I'll really deep dive into it. But the D train platform is the only platform where the tracks have buffers. And of course, there's a Christmas tree here. Happy holidays!